Yeah, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another webinar. 1 minute. Yeah, so today we have the first in a series of webinars. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, my second laptop. Today's the first in a series of exciting webinars in which people talk about their freely available code. This is the very first one by Pierre Wawrzyniak and Farid Smai on their robust processing code for MT data called Razorback. So they will give us a presentation in a minute. Just to remind you, next week we have Anna Marti, who's going to talk about response function analysis. And then we have Reza Mahemia, who was the lead in a EU program, Smart Exploration, that's just ended. And he's going to talk to us about the different techniques they use, most of them non-EM, but still to explore the subsurface. And then we have Stefan Thiel giving the third of the national series of MT programs presentation on OSLAMP, and Alison Kirkby on another software, MTPy. And then we get into inversion, and we start with Doug Oldenburg, known to everybody, who's going to give us a talk on the fundamentals of inversion. And the week after, Lindsay Hege, who gives another code talk. Many years with Doug. And after that, we have Constanza Manacero, who will be giving us a very exciting talk on probabilistic inversions of 3D MT data, where she and Juan Carlos Afonso have developed a very fast approximate forward code. And to the end of March, we have Juliana Hubert on space weather, GICs, and MT. So just to remind you, all of this information is on the MNR's webpage. And here you can go and you get the video links and the presentations of past ones, and you can register for upcoming ones. And finally, you're on a Zoom webinar, so not a Zoom meeting. So you've got 4 controls available to you: the audio settings, where your sound comes out of, or your mic. You can send messages to the panelists. Raise your hand if you want to speak, and this will be at the end. We can authorize you to speak. And then there's a Q&A. So you'll see a Q&A box, and you can type questions on the fly. And Pierre and Farid will look at those questions if they have time, and if they're quick ones, they will introduce answers as they speak. Okay, but let's focus on today's speakers, Pierre and Farid. Well, Pierre is a BRGM researcher, geophysicist in EM methods, 10 years experience in MT and CSEM. Main research themes are monitoring geothermal reservoirs and volcanoes, data processing methodological developments. And since 2019, he's been working on MEOT, MT monitoring and imaging. Farid Smai is also a research scientist at BRGM and got his PhD in 2009. He's developed expertise of multi-phase flows in porous media and scientific computing. He's been practicing Python for nearly 10 years and is the main developer of the Razorback library. So, okay, Pierre, Farid, if you want to now share your screen.
Share le screen, partage l'écran, le vert.
C'est le vert, yes.
Tout le truc là.
Écran, c'est parti. Partager. Maybe this will be below. Yes. Comme ça. Voilà. Hello guys, and thank you Alan for giving us the fantastic opportunity to present our humble work. So I am Pierre Warzignac from the BRGM, and this guy here is
Farid Smail from BRGM2.
From BRGM2. And this presentation is a result of work we initiated something like 4 years ago. It's about an open source Python library for robust processing of magnetotelluric data, and we call this library Razorback. So first, the Razorback library is available on the GitHub page that you can see on this slide, and we associated it with a publication in Frontiers in Earth Science. And a whole majority of what we are going to show today is pretty much more detailed in our papers that you can download freely because it's open source. So first, the first question is why a Python library for MT processing? Why a Python library? Python is a free programming language. It's easy to learn. It's popular in science application, and you have a whole community of Python users which make a lot of tutorial on the internet. So a library is a building block for complex application. It's a toolbox for various situations. It's not a one-way solution imposed to all problems, of course, but it gives the user the keys to customize their tools and design their own. And it connects to the rich Python science ecosystem, which you can find on the internet, many thousands of people working together. And why open source? Because we hope that an open source software will improve code-based quality, because there will be a lot of feedback from users. It will open to new features and applications thanks to user contributions, and it will probably encourage bridges toward already in use tools in the MT community, which we can see every month popping through different papers in different journals. So first I will give a small sight of the very well-known MT workflow, which is of course non-exhaustive and just a scheme to show you where we stand. You perform some data acquisition, then you have to deal with pre-processing and database management. You make your data processing, then you have to deal with data post-processing and QC to check the coherence of the data, spatial coherence, frequency coherence. Then you can perform some inversion, 1D, 2D, or 3D, and then you have to go to see a geologist, and you will be able to make some interpretation. The Razorback library will help you in pre-processing your data, in managing your database, and its main core is on data processing. We need to mention also that in the Python language, there is the MTPy library. We saw that there will be a presentation in the next month on it, which is up to our knowledge, much more designed for pre-processing and database management and data post-processing and QC. And when we begin to develop the Razorback library, we documented ourselves on the MTPy library, and we could see that there is a kind of a complementarity between both libraries. So we are very curious to see possible collaborations in the near future, in an open source, friendly, collaborative way, of course. So first, some words about the philosophy of the Razorback library. It will help the MT user in managing huge data sets, huge MT arrays. You will find some data exploration tools. You will be able to find some synchronous files in a huge set of data. You will be able to extract some common parts. The Razorback library will allow the MT user to perform transfer function estimates in different configurations, such as a single-site processing, which is the simplest one, and two-stage remote reference processing with a set of multiple remote reference. We will speak about that later. And we will be able also to perform different transfer function estimation methods, such as ordinary least square, which is the simplest one, M-estimator, and bounded influence. And we open the gate also on time-lapse processing. Now, some words about what Razorback is not, and what he will not do, and what he doesn't want to do. Razorback will not perform data QC, such as looking at the time series, spectra, synchronization, and all other kinds of problems you can meet on the field. It will not accomplish any miracles. If your data are totally corrupted by some noise sources or other problems, you will get some biased transfer function estimates. It will not perform transfer function QC analysis, such like in post-processing, distortion analysis. For this, you can take a look at tools furnished by MTPy or many other codes, of course. Our list here is totally non-exhaustive, and it will not perform inversion. And we have to say that our position is that we do not want to compete with other codes in terms of performance. That's absolutely not our goal. And we don't pretend to substitute to other pre-existing well-known and recognized codes. Sorry for this, such as RRMT or Burp and many others, of course. Oops. So now we will enter the first part of the presentation, and we will speak about the tools present in the Razorback library that will allow you to handle time series. The goals here are clearly to store, to explore, and to manage a full MT survey with lots of gigabytes. For this, we designed some elementary bricks to handle time series. So first, the MT user wants to store, to manage, and explore a full survey database. For this, we designed 3 hierarchical levels of structure, such as the inventory on the top, which will take care of the full MT survey, such as the signal set in the middle, which will gather several runs of a set of channels, and it will create some objects that will be passed to processing routines internal to Razorback, and such as the sync signal object, which is low-level time series structures, but that will include also the metadata of the time series. We will speak about that a few slides later. So let's begin by the lowest level of the elementary bricks, and let's speak about the sync signal object. It's a class of object coded in Python. At first, the most elementary time data structure that we consider are sampled signals. It's a sequence of values taken by the signal with a sampling rate and some associated metadata, such as the starting time, the calibration function, because often the raw signal you get in your time series is different from the signal of interest, such as electrode dipole length and orientation. Before going further, we also need to define synchronousness. Two signals are synchronous when they have the same sampling rate, the same starting time, and the same length. So, as a matter of fact, this definition is pretty useful for the sync signal object because you can store some synchronous signals and associated metadata in a sync signal object. But you have some restriction. As we said before, it's just the lowest level of the library. So sync signals are very simple structures. And sync signal objects alone cannot gather the time series needed for transfer function estimation. Because many things, because acquisition may be discontinuous. You can have sometimes, because of problems on the field, time intervals without data because you're low in battery or something like that. And you can have consecutive acquisition with different sampling rates. Sorry for this. And tracking the same channel, by channel we mean the same electric field in direction north-south, by example, across several runs is not easy. So we created some packages, but it's not well stored. So we need new IDs, and this new ID is signal set object. So the signal set object, a few words about it. Let's assume you have a full empty station array. You have many sites. You have starting and ending times of acquisition, which differs a lot. Your acquisition may be discontinuous because of the previously evoked problem. You can have time intervals without data, and you have consecutive runs of acquisition at different sampling rate, such as we all do on the field. So those data can be gathered in a signal set object, which reunites acquisition runs of the same channels. So we need to go further. What does the signal set object do? It groups several channels and runs in one place. It adds some labels on the channels. Labels are string describing the content, such as electric field in a direction or magnetic field in a direction.
Which site?
And the site, also the number of the site. And it guarantees that runs don't overlap with each other in time domain, and that each run contains exactly all the same channels. And the signal set object can be submitted to a transfer function estimation procedure. This is, you need to pass through a signal set to perform some transfer function procedure into Razorback. Okay, now some few words about the signal set object labeling and combination skills. So we introduced a labeling system. The labeling system is a meaningful way to retrieve one channel. If you're looking to the magnetic field in the X component, you can use the labeling system, or you can find a group of channels from a signal set object. And it associates some character strings to a group of one or more indices. We use names rather than indices because it's easier for us to to find our way in the database. And the signal set object also have combination skills. You can group or split existing signals objects to produce new ones. There will be no duplication of the data value, which is very, very useful because your memory won't explode. So you can build any combination without a memory cost. We will explain to you that just after. Oh, I see that we have a Q&A. Okay, we will answer that. We will do that later. And it has some combination skills also. You can group or split existing signal set objects to produce new ones.
By joining and splitting.
Yes, by two means. So once again, there will be no duplication of the data values. And so you won't have any memory cost. You can do that by joining different acquisition run of the same channels or merging distinct channels. And you can do that by splitting some channels or narrowing the time range. Still, this object has some restriction. A signal set is good at gathering the data for transfer function estimation procedure, but it cannot contain the full survey. This is why we need to go to the upper level of the library, which is the inventory. The inventory is an object. It's a container that gathers several signal set objects without any constraints. The empty user can explore and filter the data set. The user can build a new inventory, let's call it a sub-inventory containing less data by selecting some channels and runs or by narrowing the time range. So user can produce a signal set that contains as many signals as possible using a function that we will show you in a Jupyter notebook just later. This function is the pack function. So in practice, we start by constructing an inventory object that gathers all the data acquired for the survey. And then for each site, we extract a sub-inventory, and then we produce the adapted signal set, and then you can estimate your transfer function. A few words about memory optimization. An entire MT survey is a huge data volume. You cannot afford to load all your DFT and time series on a simple laptop. So Razorback library uses the Dask library. And the idea is that if you store your time data in a Dask array object, rather than a classical NumPy array, for example, the memory cost of the inventory of an entire survey becomes really small. And the time data are only not loaded when you need to use it, like computing the DFT coefficient, and then they are unloaded. So the memory footprint of the processing no longer depends on the size of the survey. So as a summary, we make a summary of the three objects we created. The inventory allows you to store a full survey. It filters and selects. It filters and selects data to make a reduced inventory, and you have this pack function that allows you to create the longest signal set possible. So the inventory contains and recombines signal set objects. Those signal set objects gathers time series for processing, allows you to put some labels on channels, and contains a number of channels multiplied by a number of runs. Each run can be done at a different frequency. And those signal set objects are designed to organize and label sync signal object, which store basic time series and metadata, and which are designed for internal use. So now we will show you a Jupyter Notebook tutorial. Just before we have a question, maybe I will check that. Does the Razorback program process long period magnetoelectric data acquired by the LEMI equipment? This question, I think we will open a conversation about that later, because I don't know what to answer up to now. Okay. Up to now, the Razorback library, no, I think we can answer already. Up to now, the Razorback library is designed to process Metronics files data, which is the ATS format. Of course, we can introduce a lot of other data readers. It's really open to the community to develop any data readers. So if it's only a question of data format and transfer function estimate, maybe we can do that. Okay. Okay, so now I will leave my my colleague Farid to show you the first Jupyter Notebook tutorial. Ding. Yes. C'est celui-là. Surveille celui-là.
Ouais. Okay. Yeah. So the idea is to put in move all the concepts we see thanks to Pierre. So it's about unlinked time series data. So we will see some code doing all the stuff we said before. So we start by importing the library, import Razorback. And for now, I will just consider a toy situation, mimic a record of empty signal with the electrical field and magnetic field on 5 sites, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that with several runs and different sampling rates. Is a simple picture for this situation. When we see the site 1 has only 1 runs, site 2 has 3 runs, site 3 has 2 runs, and sites 4 and 5 have 2 long runs. And we see that the different runs may be with two possible sampling rates, 512 Hertz or 1024 Hertz. So this is just a fake signal. We will just handle the data by combining and building the data we need. So for start, I will pick the four first signals, 1, 2, 3, 4, from site 1 and 2. And in these four signal set objects. For start, we can inspect a signal set, like print signal 1, and we see the message that says that the signal set contains 5 channels for one run. We see the summary of the run here with the sampling rate and the start and stop time. And the 5 channels are described here with some labels, EX1 and so on. So the tags in the text describe the label of the channels. And we can access from that to the lower level of the sync signals, but I won't tell that much on that because we don't need to handle them. So we can ask our signal set how many channels he have, or how many runs he have, what are the sampling rates, the intervals, the time intervals, and the row size of the data. And now we can play a little with that. For instance, if we consider the 3 consecutive runs of the site 2, signal 2A, 2B, 2C, we can print the 3 signals, and we see they gather the same channels, X2, X2 there, and X2 here, and the others, but on 3 different runs. The first 2 are sampled at 512 Hertz, and the last one at 1024, 1 kilohertz, okay. And if you look at the start and stop time, you see that there are 3 different runs. So what we can do is join these 3 signals to get only one signal set, signal 2, that represents all the data we have on site 2. And when we print signal 2, we get the merge of the 3 with exactly the same 5 channels, and then the 3 run inside the one structure, signal 2. And now when we ask for the sampling rates, time intervals, and start on signal 2, we get the 3 corresponding value. One note is that all these data, sampling rates, time intervals, and start, and so on, are stored in a small NumPy array. So we can use all the capability of NumPy arrays to perform a lot of operation on them, like doing the test, what are the runs that are sampled at 1 kilohertz, and we get a Boolean mask that could be useful in the next. Okay, we can also ask our signal set to extract some time intervals with the method extract_t, where we, for instance, to narrow the time interval of a signal set. This line will produce a new signal set with, again, the same channels, but only the data comprised in these time intervals. And we see here we lost the third, the last runs, because it's later in the time. Optionally, we can ask the complementary operation by with exclude equal true, and get all the data outside of the interval. Could be useful for eliminating corrupted data in a time interval, for instance. We can continue by splitting and merging channels. First, we can see that signal2.e2 gives us only the signal set containing the electrical signal of the site 2, so less channels, but with on the 3 runs on the site 2. Later we merge signal set on the time, and now with this symbol we can join a signal set, different channel into one signal set. For instance, here I'm joining the two channels EX2 and HY2 into only one signal set. So we can combine in every manner possible the thing, and we can operate at a broader level. For instance, the signal 1 and signal 2 to get 10 channels, the 5 channels of signal 1 and the 5 channels of signal 2. And we see that in the back, Razorback is filtering to give us only the synchronous part of these 10 channels. So here we obtain only one runs with a custom time interval that corresponds to the common part of the site 1 and site 2. Okay, we can also use the mask, the Boolean mask we see earlier on that will filter on the sampling rate, for instance, 512 Hertz. And we can use the select runs function to only retain the runs described by the mask. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry for this. That. We have a very good security.
Okay. Reboot. While reboot of the computer, we must be careful. Okay. So here is NumPy in action. You can add the complementary of the Boolean mask and get all the other runs, for instance. And for the list, we have the inventory that can gather all the signal of the fake campaign I'm showing you. So in all signals, I have all the signal I've seen in the beginning, and we put it in our inventory. So if I print the labels, the tags of the inventory, we see we have all the electrical and magnetics fields on the 5 sites, site 1, 2, 5, until the 5. Okay. From the inventory, we can explore it, extract some part, and combine them in signal sets. For instance, if I want to select only the channels concerning the site 3, because the tag site 3 has been defined, select channel on site 3, give me a subs inventory that is printed here, and we can check that the labels it contains concern only the site 3. From this small inventory, I can produce a coherent signal set with the function pack. So sub-inventory.pack will give me the signal set that gather all the data in sub-inventory in a coherent signal set. And so it contains only 2 runs in this example. But I can do the same with other tags. For instance, if I select channels site 2 and site 3 and pack it, I get a new signal set. Now with the 10 channels of the 2 sites, but now I see there is 3 runs gathered there. And I know that this signal set only contains synchronous signal ready to be processed. I can do the same in a lot of combination. And it's interesting at this stage to go back to the picture to see, for instance, that if I consider sites 2 and 3, we see the common part are this one and this run, and also this that share another sampling rate. But you see the combination needs to skip some part of the data. Razorback do it automatically when we use the pack function. Okay. So this is quite easy to combine the different sites. And at the end, if you want to pack an inventory that contains too much data that are not compatible between them, not synchronous, you will get a poor result. You will get the none of the Python, which means that there is no signal set that can be built on this data. So you need to be careful to correctly filter and select your channels before packing, or you won't have information to treat in the next step. Okay, there is also other feature like filtering with wildcard and so on, but I don't have the time to mention all of them. Yeah. Okay, maybe I can look at the Q&A. Yes?
Yeah.
If I found it. Can you do a quick tutorial using a real data set? Thanks. Yes, we can, and we'll do in a few minutes.
Just after.
So now I come back to the presentation. So we are talking now about computing transfer functions with the Razorback library. The goal is to operate easy single site and two-stage remote reference robust processing. First, I will put the framework and the concept we use to define the method. So the robust methods we consider are based on consecutive weighted least squares problem, on the discrete Fourier coefficients of the signals. The weighting function has a strong influence on the weighted least square. Especially two notions are important. Stability, which means that the estimate is independent of the initialization, and robustness, meaning that the estimate is not biased by outlier and abnormal data. But the fact is that one weighting function alone cannot give both stability and robustness. So the idea is to combine weighting function to get stability and robustness. To do that, we use sequences of weighting function in consecutive least squares. Starting with the most stable weighting function to ensure global stability, and ending with the most robust weighting functions to eliminate the abnormal data and outliers. So I will show you three methods based on this framework. The first one is the ordinary least square that use the simplest weighting function, which consists only with a weight always but at 1. So this is the more stable strategy, but it is not robust at all. We will use this method to compute the first guess of the other methods. The M estimator proposed by Egbert and Booker is more sophisticated. It combines two weighting functions, the Huber function and the Thomson function. You can see here a plot of these two functions. The Huber function avoids the high sensitivity to outliers and still ensures the stability of the computation, while the Thomson function is more robust but not as stable. So the M estimator is a good estimator, but there is also the bounded influence proposed by Chaves and Thomson. It has the size of the weight sequence is controllable. You can add many layers. it is more complicated because the weighting function not only rely on the residual, but also on the hat matrix coefficients. And the final weight is the product of the two subweights. You can see here the curves that are implied in an example of a sequence with 3 stages. For the hat matrix coefficient, we have this function of weight, and for the residual, those above. So the idea on the hat matrix coefficient is that for regular data, they follow the beta distribution. So coefficients that deviate from that distribution are probably outliers. Okay, for the code, we have implemented these frameworks, and there is 3 helper functions we can mention. First, we have to compute the Fourier coefficient. So signal.Fourier coefficient do this task for a given frequency of analysis with a given number of periods for the signal. There is the overlap parameter, and you can control the window to the apodization, for instance, Lippian windows. This is a low-level function, and the user don't have to manipulate it directly. The transfer function works on the. So this is the kernel of the estimation. That's a function that computes the TF estimate. It works on the Fourier coefficients, and it performs a robust estimation according to the weight sequence based in the parameters. And we can have all these 3 and others strategy following the weight parameter we feed in the function. Still, this is also a low-level function. And the user will mainly face the impedance function that will take in input a signal set, as we see seen above, a list of frequencies to analyze, and a strategy given by the weights sequence. Also, and I won't recall to you, because I don't have the time, how the 2-stage multi-remote method works, but this is also implemented in the impedance function. So thanks to the possibility of the signal set and the implementation of the impedance, this function handles multi-runs at once, eventually with different sampling rates. And now we are going to see the thing in action on real data. Thanks. Pierre.
You can rest now. Okay, so I'm going to show you a second Jupyter notebook with a real test on a real data set, which is available on the GitHub page and the Jupyter notebook also, so you can basically redo everything that we're going to do here at home using Jupyter notebooks. So our test data set is a set of 4 stations, 4 empty stations located in the western part of the city of Strasbourg. So you can already imagine that the further we are from Strasbourg, the better the data are. It's a peri-urban context. So for those who don't know where Strasbourg is, it's on the eastern part of France and at the German border. So we have 4 synchronous empty stations, which are named 2, 4, 6, and 9. And we also have a set of 2 distant remote reference stations, purely magnetic, which are located 30 kilometers away on the north of the survey and 30 kilometers away on the south of the survey. And for this data test, we use Metronix stations only. So now, hop, let's go to the Jupyter Notebook. Yeah. Voilà, ça marche. OK. So in this notebook that we can consider as a tutorial to perform some ordinary least square, M estimator, and bounded influence, we will show you how to deal with ATS files data, and we hope that it will help you to process your data using Razorback. So first, a number of lines you need to put on the top of each call to the Razorback library. It's the lines that where you import Razorback, the Razorback library. You need to import NumPy, and you need to import matplotlib.pyplot. Matplotlib is a graphical library of Python. First, in order to get all the metadata that we spoke before of the data set, we designed some pretty handy functions for you guys. So those functions are called sensor and calibration. We will not go too much into details because it will work with the data set that we gave you. It will help you to gather all the metadata of the dataset, electric dipole length, orientation, calibration files. But we think and we saw that everyone has a handling strategy to get those metadata. So it's up to you to design your own, or you can use those if you want. So we have a full empty data set. We need to create the largest hierarchical structure of the Razorback library to contain everything. This structure is inventory. So here in this section, we are creating the inventory. So we create some variables, the files variable, which is the list of data to load. We are creating some pattern. For each data file, you want to extract the name of your site and the channel of your site. Your channel will be EX, EY, HX, HY, HZ. It's really up to you. And you also create a tag template that will automatically create some tags. Tags are labels, including the site number and the channel number. If you want, you can also correct in your inventory some bad information that people on the field put in the data header, or you can correct your data header if you want. You can intervene here. So we had two mistakes here on calibration name files for two magnetic coils, and we corrected them there. Then you can create and fill the inventory. First, you initiate an inventory using this command. The small RB here is Razorback, the Razorback library, and you use a dot, and you will have a full set of functions. And then we will get calibration data for each file. We will load data files into signal variables, and we will tag and store the signal using this formulation with the append function. So now all the data are loaded in the inventory, and we can use the inventory to explore and handle the dataset. So you can check first the number of files you have in your inventory by using this command. You have 24 files. Wow, that's a lot. You can display the tags and labels included in the inventory by typing dot tags after the name of your inventory. And you can see this list. You have site 2, site 4, 6, 9, 99, and 100. For site 2, you have 2 components of the electric field and 3 components of the magnetic field. For site 4, it's the same, 2 electric fields, 3 magnetic fields. For site 6, 2 electric field, 3 magnetic field. For site 9, again the same. And for site 99, which is the first of your 2 distant remote reference, you will have only 2 tags because there are only 2 magnetic cores plugged on the empty station. And for site 100, it's the same. So you can see that it's a little bit powerful to check all the content of your data attributing a tag or a labeling strategy. At least we find it useful.
Yes.
We enjoy that a lot. And then you can create and show a signal set object for data contained in site 4 only. So the creation of your data of your signal set will be done by using the function pack, and you will show the signal set using the function print. So you can see here I have my inventory, which is called inv. I filter in my inventory on the tag site 0004 and the star, and we pack it and we obtain the signal set object that only contains data from site 4. And you can see that you have 5 channels, 1 run. It's sampled at 128 Hertz, and it lasts approximately 13 hours. The same operation can be done for your first distant remote reference. So you can see here site 99 has 2 channels, 1 runs, and the data is longer. But it has only 2 channels because there is only two magnetic field recording. So now we can create and show the signal set object content for the full inventory, which will include sites 2, 4, 6, 9, 99, and 100. And the full data set will be reduced to its maximal synchronous time section, and the pack function will produce a signal set which will narrow the range of the time window to the common synchronousness of the whole inventory. So let's do that. You can take your full inventory in the inv variable and pack it. And then, miracle, you will have a signal set containing 24 channels and 1 run. And you can see that the sampling rate is always 128 Hertz, and the duration of the signal set is narrowed because one station stopped earlier than the others. So it lasts only this time 10 hours. So it's pretty useful to get some synchronous parts of your signals, and yeah, that's all. Now we designed a function which is called prepare signal set that you can use. You can take this part of the code and use it for your own, and it will build the signal set from the inventory and a sub-selection of local sites. By local site, we mean the site where you want to estimate your transfer function, and with some remote sites. Remote sites can include a list of remote references for multiple remote references processing. So the function starts by extracting the channels of interest and pack them into a signal set. Yeah. Then the signal set is enriched with specific tags, which are E, B. E and B represent the electric and magnetic field on the local site. And B remote includes the whole arrangement of remotes that you will put into your variable. And now we can show the signal set object with E, B, and B remote tags for processing site 4 using site 99 and 100 as remote references. So you can see, now you can do that using this function. It's really simple. You paste the name of your inventory, the name of the station where you want to get your transfer function, and the list of your remote references. So you can see here we are a little bit more lucky because the corresponding signal set contains 9 channels, 1 runs, and the run is longer than before. No? We have synchronous data that last 12 hours. 12 hours. And you can see those very beautiful, sorry, you can see those beautiful tags. E is the electric field channels, so it's 0 and 1, and you can see it's EX and EY. B is yes for site 4 here and here. B is indexed by 2 and 3. 2 and 3, it's the horizontal components of the magnetic field of site 4 here and here. And you have those B remote tags which index 5, 6, 7, and 8 channels, which are the magnetic field components of the distant remote references. So now you have a signal set that you can, with which you can feed your transfer function procedure. But first, you need to define a frequency array in log scale for transfer function computation. So here we choose to compute data, compute frequencies from 1 millihertz to 32 hertz, which is half of the Nyquist value associated with the sampling rate of the data. And now you can compute first using the ordinary least square method the two-stage remote reference estimate for site 4 with site 99 and site 100 as remote reference. So by for a reminder, I just put that here, but it's pretty much betterly described in the paper, and of course in Alan Jones and Alan Shave book. During the first stage, you perform a regression to estimate the transfer function between the magnetic field at site 4 and the magnetic field at sites 99 and 100. And the second stage, during the second stage, you will use this transfer function between magnetic fields to produce a synthetic magnetic field on the position of site 4. And then you will perform a second regression between this synthetic magnetic field and site 4 electric field. This is the two-stage remote reference method. So first, you need to prepare your signal set. So you will call it SIG. It will search in the inventory that you defined before with site 4 as a first station and site 99 and 100 as remote references. You can print your signal set. It's a good way to do because it's quality check in the Razorback library. So you can see you still have this full signal set that we saw before. And then you will create a variable called impedance ordinary least square, which will be the result of using the impedance function on your signal on the frequency list you decided, and including the remotes you defined before using the prepare signal set function. And then when you launch this, you have some kind of, it's not a weight bar, but you see the progression of the computation for all the frequencies. And when it's over, we'll print it the shape of the variable. It's 42, 2, and 2. 42 because we have 42 frequency, and 2 and 2 because we have x, y, and yx. So we have an impedance tensor in a complex value for 42 frequencies. So we designed, we put some code lines to show you the results. So you can use it if you want. It's up to you. And here are the results for the ordinary least square. We are a little bit sorry because we don't know how to make some bigger graphics on the Jupyter notebooks. Sorry for you guys.
Je peux zoomer avec contrôle molette.
Je peux zoomer avec contrôle molette? Yeah, now it's bigger, but not exactly as I wanted it to be. But so you can see that you have some estimates for from 1 millihertz to 32 hertz. And you have some error bars which are very, very low on the XY and YX component. And it's a little bit noisy. Okay, now that we saw that, we will perform the M-estimator transfer function estimating two-stage remote reference processing with the same combination of stations. And for this, you need to import features in the Razorback library, which is the features .weight. And in this, you will import the M-estimator weight. This variable has a transparent name. And when you will call your impedance function, you will still call it on your signal, on your frequency list, and you can call the variable weight, and you can put the M-estimator weights. You still use a remote. You can use a coherency threshold prefilter, and you can set up some Fourier transform options that you can see in the paper. So it will be exactly the same visual. You will see the progression of your computation frequency by frequency, and then you can see the result. So you can see it's a little bit better on the highest frequency part of the signal, and yeah, it looks better. And now we will compute the bounded influence transfer function using exactly the same configuration. This time, you need to import from the Razorback.weights. You need to import your bounded influence weights. And in the weight call here, you put bounded influence weights, and you have two variables. The first variable corresponds to the rejection probability. Here it's set to 1%. Here it's set to 1%. And you have 3 steps here. Quelqu'un veut parler là du coup? C'est un nouveau partage? And you can make the computation, and you will see the results here. So you can see that in our procedure, error bars are larger with bounded influence processing. Yes, so you can use this Jupyter notebook. You can do whatever you want with it. And in the paper, we using nearly the same data set, we tested all possible combinations of remote reference stations, and we computed the apparent resistivity and phase and coming from the impedance, of course, for any possibility of remote reference combination. So you can see that first you have your single site processing, then you use bunch of 1 remote reference, bunch of 2 remote reference, bunch of 3 remote reference, and up to the full empty array. And you have results for M-estimator, for bounded influence. So you can compare M-estimator and bounded influence for any combination of remote reference. And we find it interesting to check at the phase tensor plots in frequency domain. Here, the lowest frequency is on the right side of the graphics. And the number of remote references inserted in the processing grows up when you go up on the graph. And you can see that you have real differences between 1 Hertz and 0.1 Hertz in phase tensor shapes and frequency evolution. It seems that the M estimator yields some corrupted results in this band, and the bounded influence behaves a little bit better. Yeah. So that's it. That's it for today. So we have some perspectives. The Razorback library exists and can be used, but there are many perspectives of development. And we would like to invite MT users to contribute and initiate teamwork on MT robust processing procedures. A lot of progress can be made. We can implement new data prefilters because DFT are tables that you can downweight some coefficients that you don't want to use because you made a wavelet analysis, for instance, and you saw some anthropic electromagnetic pollution on some time and frequency parts of your spectrograms. You can implement new or different procedures and insert it in the library. It's really open. You can design some new weighting functions if someone has an idea one day. You can push time-lapse processing with the data handling tool that we show you, and you can make some interstation transfer function processing. So testers are very much welcome. And we remind you the paper and the GitHub page. And now, if everyone has a question, je bascule sur le Q&A. No, okay. No question.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, Farid, that was a little quick. I'm sure I and everybody else didn't catch everything, but yeah, it's great when people make these things available because it really advances the field. You know, when code's made available like this, especially code that you can plug in your own routine. So I do very much encourage the community to write routines for reading in other sort of data like Phoenix data or LEMI data, and then we will all benefit. So you have actually a chat comment about how to make a bigger figure. Somebody says if using matplotlib, pylib bigger figure using fig size argument fig equals blah blah blah. Anyway, so that's useful for you perhaps to make bigger figures. We have our first question from Syed Mohammed Abtahi Faru, and I'll read the question out so that it gets into the recording. I do not clearly understand your motivation for developing this toolbox. If you do not intend to compete with similar toolboxes. No. Actually, I would like to see some comparisons between processing results by Razorback and other toolboxes to see which is the more accurate.
There are no similar toolbox in Python. And there is a validation in the paper of between Razorback and Burp in M estimator and bounded influence processing. And clearly, we assume our position that we do not want to enter any competition because we want to build a base for people to work together.
If we put it in another way, at this stage, the robust methods implemented in Razorbacks are well known in the literature, so we did not produce novelty on the side of the problem. So I don't know what to compare. the only things we can do is check that we obtain the same result as other codes that implement also the same method. But Razorback, as it is today, for us at least, is the foundation to experiment on methods in the future when we will have the time and the fundings to explore new methods, of course.
Yeah, I think the very important point here is that, you know, if you own Medtronics equipment, Medtronics makes a code available for processing their data. If you own Phoenix equipment, Phoenix makes a code available. But many of us in academia routinely deal with data from all sorts of different systems. And so something like this, where you can actually use the same framework for processing data from different systems, is hugely important. And I, you know, I think it's absolutely fabulous. Syed has a second question again.
Yes.
Yeah, in comparison with MATLAB, Python is less customized and is slower, especially in calculating FFT. Did you find a way to speed up the code execution? In addition, does Razorback use parallel computing?
So I think this is my part in the teams.
I think we agree also.
I'm not fully agreed with the beginning of the question.
No.
I don't see in what way MATLAB is faster than Python, because both are slow language relying on C implementation of computation for like FFT. So I'm not sure if it's true. I know that complex, faster FFT are also available on Python, so I'm not sure. We don't know, we didn't spend a lot of effort in speeding up the code execution, but we make the works cleaner, so the speed execution is good. And about the parallel computing, Razorback use parallel execution thanks to the MKL implementation inside NumPy. So if you run Razorback on your laptop and it's well configured, which is usually the case, all the core of your computer will be used during the processing. So yes, and this is also a difficulty to compare different code, because there is some code that are only sequential, and Razorback can do some parallelism. So it's not really fair to compare them directly.
Yeah, I think there's one very important point. I mean, I've had MATLAB for years now, but I tend to avoid it because I want to share my code with other people, and MATLAB's very expensive.
MATLAB has some problem from the point of view of the open source. It's you have to pay. There is difference between the version, but so we picked Python. MATLAB is a good tool too. Yeah.
I think MATLAB's it has its role, but it's limited because you cannot easily share it with colleagues worldwide who may not be in a position to be able to afford to buy MATLAB, whereas Python is freely available.
And you have also this toolbox updates and stuff like that. Some functions aren't available when you make a up version on your laptop. It's we used MATLAB. I used MATLAB a lot in the past, but I think we have a pretty much more stable magnetotelluric processing process with Python, and we already exchanged the code, and we have some beta testers, and I can say that they are pretty much satisfied now.
Yeah, unless Syed is asking another one.
Okay.
This will be the last question from Syed.
No one has a...
Exactly. If I understand your algorithm correctly, you merge the time series from different sites and different runs. So when you merge the time series with different system sites with different sampling rates, different noise levels, different E to H coherences, this means that the final noise level is biased towards noisy ones. it becomes problematic, especially if the signal values has a wide range of variation in the sites and each site has different noise level. Then an outlier value in a certain site is not outlier in another site. How do you solve this problem? I think it's more reliable if we define the weights and other outlier levels separately for each system and site.
No, that's contrary to the philosophy of the two-stage remote reference processing, because you have a weight, you have on the first stage of the two-stage remote reference processing implies that you will solve by ordinarily square M estimator or Boolean influence. So you will solve the equation between the output. The output is the magnetic field on your local site, and the input. The input is the full data array of all possible remote reference DFTs. So you can see that in this regression, you are trying to find a solution between a magnetic field which is local to a full empty array set. And the weighting data strategy in this first stage cannot be, cannot be, it's a global weighting strategy. You cannot attribute some weights to some stations. You can put out one station of your remote reference array if you think it's corrupted. This is why we always in our work we always compute remote reference processing for any combination of our empty array. And if we have some correlated noise, we can see that for this combination of remote references, we have a very corrupted sounding. I think this solves the question that you asked, Syed. You can see the example in the paper. Maybe it's a different way to see it, but I think it solves the problem.
And again, concerning the algorithm, what we did is proposing a framework that gather a family of methods to implement in a uniform way, but we didn't create something on the algorithm. We put 2 or 3 classic algorithms in the literature and implement them in the library. So I'm sure there is many things that can be done, and we hope to investigate this in the future, but I'm not here to advocate for the method we selected.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on one point that Syed wrote, and that he says you merge data with different sampling rates. And I don't think you do. You look for a set of the same sampling rates and process that. You don't intrinsically have a resampler within your code.
No resampling.
No, we don't.
That could be useful in some situation, but for no resampling. What we can do is take a run at some sampling rate, compute the Fourier coefficients, and second run at a different sampling rate, compute the Fourier coefficients, and use all these Fourier coefficients to do the estimation.
Oh, okay.
But what we do in practice is we check the overlap between two frequency runs, as everyone does, I think. But we could do what we say.
Yeah.
But it will concern only a few frequencies of analysis, because
maybe it's worth it.
I don't know. The more data is better.
Yeah.
Well, we have no more questions, and we've run a little bit over time. I'd just like to again thank you. And what I would encourage you to think of doing is starting a user group with a bulletin board page or something, so that users can pose questions to a community of users rather than always to you.
Yes, for now, the GitHub can be used for the user to ask questions mainly about the code, so it's not a full tool to animate a community. That's right. But if user has a question about the code, they can ask the question on the GitHub page, on the issue.
Yeah. I'm very excited about this, just as excited as I am about all the other free software that's around that benefits our community, and I hope other people take up and contribute, just like MTPy has become a very useful tool. Yeah. So thank you again, Pierre and Farid. I'll just get the screen back from you now and say thank you, and remind everybody we have next week's presentation is at 1400, so a couple of hours earlier, and is from Anna Marti. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. And this video will be up for those who want to watch it again, and for those who didn't watch it in half an hour or so. Bye, everybody. Have a good time and stay safe. Bye for now.